So, wanted to talk to you a little bit today about my favorite subject, which is uncovering your customers' biggest problems. And I think this is one of the areas that, in my experience of helping founders scale their products, find product market fit, and actually create a product that people are excited to talk about and buy, it's my experience that people get this really, really wrong. And it confuses me because I think this is very, very easy to start to do. So we're going to dive into what the problems are, what people get wrong, and we're also going to give you some helpful hints and tips around how you start to do this in your business, how you build what I think is one of the easiest unfair competitive advantages you can build into your product and how you can start to do that. And then if it's useful at the end, I'm going to ask you if you would like access to my cheat sheet for having these kind of conversations with your customers. So it'll give you those hints and guides around what questions to ask, how to have these conversations, and actually how to do this. So let's get into the customer problems. I think you all know, and I hope you all know, that your customers have not just one problem, they have many, many problems. They have problems in their personal lives, they have problems at work, they have problems with their business, they have problems with their kids, they have problems with their car. There's problems everywhere in this space, right? And because there is so many problems that you possibly could solve, the mistake that I see entrepreneurs making all of the time is trying to create products and services that does everything for everyone. And Elon Musk at the minute is trying to turn Twitter into the everything app. We'll see how that works. But I think that's fundamentally a bad way to go with your product or service, because when you do everything for everyone, it's my experience that you do nothing well for no one. And so I want to teach you a bit of a framework within this talk of how you're going to explore the world of problems that your customers have, find the deep story of pain and obstacles that block their progress that they want to make, and hone in on the one that you were put here to solve. There is one problem that your customers have that you're going to be uniquely placed to solve really, really well. And if you just focus on that, you will get wild growth and traction for your product or service. So something really weird that I experienced in being a product designer in these very large global SaaS companies is we would create these products most of the time without speaking to customers. And you'll see where my passion for this subject comes from as we go through this talk. And then we would encounter our customers who are even using our products in weird and wonderful ways that we had never imagined. And they were using them as workarounds for problems that we didn't know existed. Or we would find that they'd actually come up with their own solutions to the problems that we should have really been solving. And when we honed in on those weird workarounds and solutions that they're currently using, we always unlocked incredible hidden value within the business that we were operating in. And so, I have a saying at Yuzu with the designers that I work with: if we ever hear about someone using a spreadsheet that is not directly related to accounting, bookkeeping, or financial modeling, we should be rubbing our hands together because we've probably just made millions. Because people create these like horrendous workarounds that don't really solve the problem for them, don't really satisfy them in any way, shape, or form, but is kind of good enough to like hobble along with. And if you come along and create a tailored product or service that solves it in a better way, they will abandon this weird workaround and move towards your service. So you've got to understand, what are they doing to cope with the problems that they have in their life currently, because they are doing something, or sometimes the solution is doing nothing, which is just as painful for them. How many of you think you could say you 100% know the deep reason someone would buy your service? How many of you feel like highly confident that you understand why people buy what you're offering? Confidence is very easy to gain in why people would buy your product or service. I think people really overcomplicate this process, massively so. And with a few conversations, we can get you from that 8 to an 11, where I've seen this transform the alignment in a team around the problem they solve, where they can't help but create a product that is incredibly successful because it becomes such a bug in their brain. They're working nights and weekends on it because it annoys them that this problem exists and they know the solution to it and they have to go and create it. How many of you also feel that you're kind of chucking things at the wall and seeing what sticks? So when you're creating new products, when you're creating new services, you're just kind of having an idea and you're thinking, that sounds like it would work. You throw it out there at the market and you see what sticks. And if it doesn't work, you try again and you try again and you try again. And hopefully you get to the point where actually you have created something that works, right? We want to avoid that at all costs, right? Because creating these products and services is a lot of work. It's a ton of work, especially if you're really thinking through all of the moving parts of how you're going to deliver this solution to the particular problem that you want to solve. So there is a smarter way to do this. And this is what we're going to get into, of how you do it in a consistent and logical manner. Great news, it doesn't cost thousands of pounds to do. In fact, it will probably cost you nothing. And it also doesn't take a ton of time. So, I call this like the start guessing mode, where people enter into this. We think someone would want this. I think this is a good idea, but we're guessing really around what they want and why they would need it. We don't have a deep, compelling reason for why we've created what we create. This photo is slightly small, but who knows what this photo is of? Can anyone guess what that is of? I think this is one of the most fascinating things I've ever learned about, but apparently no high quality photos on the internet of it exist. So after World War II, the Americans pulled out of all of their air bases that they had built on these kind of remote islands in the Far East, right? They had created these runways in the jungle to hide their planes, and they would drop cargo out of the sky down onto those air bases. And the servicemen there, the soldiers there, would share those supplies out with the locals. And so the locals had no concept for why that food, those magical items, would literally fall out of the sky on a parachute. No clue. They didn't know that World War II was waging. And when the Americans left, they were very, very confused. And so they started to build replica runways. That is a airplane made completely out of bamboo leaves. They were building radio towers, all of the stuff that you would associate with a military base, they started to do. And there's these great photos of them walking around with like painted, tribally painted, like USA Army soldier uniforms, right? So they thought by creating and copying what those soldiers did, that the food would start falling out of the sky again. And actually they sat around for a couple of weeks. Obviously that didn't happen because they didn't understand the processes and the logistics that caused that food to arrive from America via the sky, fall onto the floor, and they could then consume it, right? Your competitors are doing this. And I see this, especially if you're in the software space, and especially if you have a collection of very large competitors who have been in the market for a while. They are doing this. They are cargo culting, right? They're all looking at each other's products and services, and they're saying, that looks like a good idea. Why don't we copy that feature? Why don't we copy that landing page? Why don't we copy that piece of marketing copy or that advert? Because if we just copy what they do, we'll get the results that they got, right? But as we can tell from cargo cults, that's not what happens. And so we spend all of this time, effort, money, and attention building these things that actually there's no reason for why we would know how to make them work, right? We're missing a key ingredient that we don't understand because we haven't done the research, right? And so we end up in this kind of like standoff phase where everyone is looking around at everyone else, copying what their services are, what their products are, talking about them in the same ways, targeting the same cost, and really everyone else is a rip-off of everyone else because they're all assuming that their competition must have gone and done the same and sensible thing and discovered deeply compelling reasons to create that feature. And I can say, for working at a company that was earning over 70 million a year, I can safely say we created many features that when we spoke to our customers about, they were like, I don't care about that at all. And we'd spend 6 months building that product out. I want you to break free from this little standoff scenario here. And again, it is super easy to do. Stop copying your competition, start actually innovating and creating something that your customers want. So if we were to put creating products and offers that you release to the market and people are like excitedly putting their hand up and being like, I want to talk to you about that. Take my money. I want to buy. If we were to put that on a continuum of luck versus skill, where do you guys think that sits on that continuum? Do you think it requires more luck to say you just got to keep trying this again and again and again until you find the thing that works? Or is it more of a skill in which you could say, I can get to a point where everything I release is wildly successful? I would say, in terms of my understanding, most people operate on the luck side where they release something and then they pivot, where they're trying to refine what their understanding of their customers are. But actually, I think it can be almost wholly a skill, because the skill is operating from a standpoint where you're guessing, right? We don't actually have to guess when we release these things. And so we can reduce the amount of luck required. You can be lucky, right? You can release something at the right time, at the right place, in the right moment, that just the zeitgeist gets hold of it and you are successful despite yourself. But that really scares me, and it scares me for this reason, this statistic: 42% of your the competition are going to make this mistake, and 42% of them go out of business, die, because they make this mistake. So CB Insights, this research company, did a post-mortem on 1,000 startup deaths, and they bucketed those deaths into categories, and by far the biggest category was this: 42% of companies went out of business because they created a product or a service that the market did not need or want, right? They released something, no one wanted to buy it, and they run out of money because they couldn't get to that point where they've had the lucky guess to say, it's not that. This makes me really angry, because I think there's a 1,000 reasons to go out of business, right? There's a financial crisis, your bank doesn't give you a loan, you have a cash flow problem, your co-founder's an asshole, steals all your customer base and runs off and does their own thing. Those things you can't really control, right? These things are difficult. This reason right here, if you go out of business because you couldn't work out what to sell someone, that is entirely your fault. That's entirely your fault. This is the one thing that is wholly in your control, which raises some eyebrows when I say, but if you go out of business because you couldn't find product market fit, it's because you were doing this. 81% of founders are currently being incredibly selfish, right? And what do I mean by that? So we get any founder that we work with to fill out a bit of an onboarding form for us. And in that form, we ask those founders, have you spoken to at least 5 people about your product or before you want to go and build it, launch it, etc.? And 81% of them, as it currently stands, voted that they'd spoken to either 0 or less than 5 people about their product or service. And that is what leads to this, because they live in their own bubble and they're operating on that luck spectrum of just throwing things out and seeing what sticks. And I think that's quite a selfish thing and a selfish way to operate, right? You're concerned about what you want to do, what you want to build, why you want to do it. But actually, have you ever been at a dinner party with someone who is like that, right? Where all they want to do is talk about themselves, their problems, their life, etc. Or if you've got a friend who's always like this, like maybe you don't speak to so much, but every time you do, all they're like is me, you eventually go like, my God, I don't want to speak to you anymore. So many businesses operate in that paradigm, right? Where they're trying to go around to all of their customers and say, I've created this thing. Do you want it? Do you want it? Do you want it? And actually the answer is no, because you never stopped and listened to what my problem was at all. And I want to show you the statistic here from the Design Management Institute. So they have this design value index, and companies that they rate within that index that get the highest scores on their design maturity, essentially, outperform the S&P 500 by 211% within the data range that they've got, right? What does it mean being a design-centric company, right? I'm not talking about you needing to be someone who can draw, who can create pretty websites or nice-looking videos, great adverts, clever copy. I'm not talking about that at all. Those things help, but what I mean by design-centric and what they mean by design-centric is that we are using constraints put on us via the business model and via the needs and wants of our customers to creatively solve a problem. And companies that really understand the problem they solve rank very highly on this design value index, or their maturity scale that they have. And that is why they do so much better than companies who rank lower on that scale. I don't know, like, if any of you have ever spent $2,000 on a Herman Miller chair, the whole thing is about having this incredibly ergonomic solution to your needs of being, in your office all day, work from home, let's say. You've got, in fact, one of the most interesting examples of this, I think, is IKEA, right? Why has no one copied IKEA as a business? People have tried. People make cheap, crappy furniture. You can get it off Wayfair. It's not always a fun experience to build. IKEA really understands the problems that it solves, right? IKEA exists for you to be able to take your family to on the weekend to redo your kid's bedroom up. It allows you to go for some of those crazy meatballs that everyone seems to love so much. You can see the entire room built and assembled before your eyes. You can fit all of the furniture into your family car in a flat pack manner. It provides you all of the tools you need, because it understands that those of us who don't own garages anymore don't have vast collections of tools. All we probably have is an Allen key, something like that, because we move so much. They understand the process, the problem that they solve so well, and they wrap that problem in such amazing processes. They're almost impossible to copy as a company, because yep, you can create the cheap flat pack furniture. That's not the thing that they do. Creating the entire processes around that product that solve the problem very deeply for their customers is next to impossible, because you can't get the institutional knowledge about the problems they solve by looking at their website or using their product. It doesn't transfer. It's uncopyable. And so if you hang your hat as a business person on being design centric, which means understanding the problems you solve and coming up with more creative ways to solve them better, you will outperform your competition. And we see this time and time again here at Yuzu. The founders that make falling in love with their customers' problems their priority do incredibly well. Those that are operating in that selfish paradigm where they want to create a product because it's what they want to build and they think everyone is too stupid to understand why they should buy it, they do very poorly, because no one wants to speak to those businesses. So I've got a bit of a challenge for you. And I promise you, if you just do this, you will change your business massively. I want you to adopt this documentarian mindset, right? Which is, your job as a founder is to deeply understand the problems of the people that you want to serve, right? You can pick any group of people that you want to work with. They are going to have problems. What is the story of those problems? How do they come to encounter them? What happens when they encounter those problems? What were they trying to achieve? What outcomes are they dreaming about? What are their hopes and dreams for the future when that problem is solved? If you fall in love with understanding that story, and you go out and you do the work that all of your competition pretty much are refusing to do, because they're all just looking at everyone else's service and copying that, essentially. If you do that, you will change your business, and you will get to a point where you understand why people buy your product and service on a very deep intrinsic level. And it's very hard to outcompete you when you do that. So I want you to do one thing and one thing only on the back of this conversation with me here today. It takes less than you think. I want you to book 5 30-minute to 45-minute calls with your ideal customer. You are not trying to sell to them. You are not trying to sell to them. You are trying to have a deep conversation with them around their problems, their lives, why they want to make progress in their lives, what obstacles that they are coming up against, right? And if you do this, this is a really compelling thing that we can do, right? In terms of everyone's favorite subject is themselves, right? Whether they admit it or not. You start getting someone to talk about themselves and the problems that they have, they will not stop talking to you. And so if you just do this, you will change your business. So I'm going to teach you the ways in which you can have these conversations really effectively in a second. How many of you have spoken to, and I don't mean sales conversations, how many of you have actually booked calls with potential customers to talk to them about their problems and not try and sell them anything.
I think the biggest thing that came out of that, thanks for putting me on the spot, by the way, that came out of that was actually really hearing what was going on in their world, because I think I totally agree. I think it's so easy to look at what other photographers are doing and just think, oh, they must be doing well because they look like they're doing well online, and then doing it. So I think it was just uncovering like what was important to them and how they saw it. And they came up with things that maybe I hadn't thought of before, especially because I've just done this recently for a new niche. And that was quite interesting.
That's the thing that blows my mind about this, is that if you do this, we move from that luck and guessing paradigm into your customers will just tell you what to create. We don't need to guess. They are experts in their problems. And they will tell you what's missing from the stuff that's out there, why they have these weird workarounds, what they were hoping to get. They will tell you what they really want you to do for them. And because you're not trying to sell to them, because you're treating them like experts in their own lives and asking them about that, they will share with you things that will create product and service, like features of that product and service, but they'll also write all of your marketing messaging for you. They'll tell you in which way to talk about your product and service that makes it really compelling for them to buy. And I can tell a mile off when a company has done this and has this understanding versus those companies that are like operating in that cargo cult mentality, just from the effectiveness of like the copy they have on their website, right? So when you have these conversations, you need to adhere to this principle. This is something that I got told a long time ago when I was working as a recruitment consultant in sales. In sales, you can never sell anyone anything. You have to get them to state the problem themselves first. Then they have to logically tell you that solution that you have in your back pocket would actually help them. And then you present them the solution and they go, oh, that's a great idea. And you say, yeah, I know, you said it, not me. These conversations have to flow like this, right? Because the mistake that most people make when they have these conversations is they jump on the call and then they start to tell them about their service and they say, do you think that would be good? Would that solve your problem? People go, yeah, that would solve my problem. And because we operate in this weird paradigm with these research calls where people are trying to make you feel correct and like all of your work hasn't been wasted and for nothing. Like, you would be a very strange person to jump on a call with someone that you probably like and respect. That's why you're doing one of these calls with them and be like, do you know what, Pippa, like your service is really dumb. You're really bad at what you do. I'd never buy that. It would be like, it's a waste of time. That would be a really awkward call. And most people won't do that. What instead they'll do is like, yep, that's amazing. Oh, I would totally buy that. Oh, I'm totally going to use that service, right? But actually they have no intention to. So we need to get rid of that bias. We need to get rid of that bias. And we do that in a particular way, right? We do that with what I call like killer questions. In these conversations, you cannot start a question that doesn't start with one of these 5 words, right? This is very hard to do, very, very hard to do. And still, I've been doing these research conversations now for like 6 years. I still find myself asking questions that start with do. Do you do this? The answer will always be yes, pretty much, even if they don't. So we have to ask killer questions. And the reason we have to ask these questions, again, if you're trained in sales at all, you'll know like these are the ways in which you start a question with these words become open questions. That allows me to ask you something and then your participant can lead you where they want to go. Whereas when we start with a closed question, we actually lead them to the thing we want to talk about. We shut out all of the possibilities around that, and then we just have a conversation about that thing, which might mean, let's say we're talking about creating a AI-powered lead gen machine, right? And we say, do you have problems getting leads? Well, the answer is probably like, from a business owner, yeah. But actually, if we'd gone through with the question and said to them, what's the biggest problem in your business right now? They might have told us about something completely different, which is way more pressing for them, that if we innovated on, they would be way more thankful for. And so you have to be brave in these conversations because you're going to want to bring up the thing that you really wish they had a problem with. You're going to be trying to be selfish in these conversations. But if you are brave and you allow them to, you can introduce the general area that you're talking around for context for them. But if you are brave and you enable them to lead you where they want you to go, that's how you uncover true serious innovation that you can make. An example of this is, for years, I was doing research on a product where we were creating this data reporting platform for teachers. And the question we were always asking is, do you need more data on your students, right? The answer was always yes. 2 years, yes. So we built this product, more data, more reporting capabilities, spending more money on cloud computing resources to deliver this to the customers. We had 0 customers that would pay for the product. And so I went and had a good, deep, open conversation with the people that we had been talking for 2 years. And in that conversation, we found a story that the people we were talking to weren't the ones who were actually requiring the data at all. And in fact, they were almost at war with other teachers in the school who were the ones who consumed the reports. And when we went and talked to the ones who consumed the reports, and we said, what do you need these reports for? We found this entire reporting process that we were making incredibly complicated, because we were giving them very technical reports out of our system. But the people consuming the data were not technical at all. They were like, I want something way simpler than that. And we found a way in which to simplify that system down, do way less, develop way less. And once we did that, that product scaled to 2 million in annual recurring revenue in 12 months, because we found the painful story and we actually asked what was going on in people's lives rather than coming with our own preconceived notion, right? Why is everything leading to why? You want to get eventually to asking people these deeper questions around the why of, why is this a problem for you? But that can feel very aggressive if you come out of the gate in these kind of conversations and start asking why. People are like, oh my God, I feel like I'm being attacked. I don't even really know why. Like, why is a very introspective question. When you ask someone why, they'll usually stop and think for quite a while before they answer. So why is your secret weapon, but you keep that in your back pocket for later on within those conversations, because it is a very powerful question to be asking people. Okay, and then I want to touch on this point. So if any of you are car enthusiasts, you'll know that that's a photo of the Ford Model T line. And Henry Ford is famously, I think it's actually a misquote, but famous for saying, you shouldn't ask your customers what they want, because they would have just, if I'd have asked my customers what they wanted, they'd have just said faster horses, right? And he goes on and invents this car that the average American can afford at that point, right? And this is the start of the automobile age. And I think I disagree with that. And I don't actually think he meant what he meant. We can't ask our customers what they think the solutions to their problems should be. It's a really important point, because if they knew the solutions to their problems, they would have either created the thing that solves it and would have started that as a business themselves, or they would have created a workaround that solves the problem in a compelling enough way that there's no way you're going to ever sell them anything, because they're happy with the current solution. People are experts in their problems and the things that get in the way of them getting the results that they want. They are not experts in the solutions to those problems. So when you have these conversations, when you're being this documentarian, you are trying to ask questions that uncover problems. You then are going to go away and you're going to think about how you might create something that solves those problems and come back and say, look, based on everything you've said, we've created this thing. What do you think about that? And they'll go, that's bloody amazing. You've really understood my problem. No one else has done that before. Oh, but you might want to think about X, Y, and Z, because I forgot to tell you what happens next after this thing, right? And this is an iterative process that you have to go through. Again, that product that I created that we scaled to 2 million ARR, on the last week that I was in that job, I had a research conversation, bearing in mind I was doing this 2 or 3 times a week for 2 years, right? I had a research conversation where someone said, oh, well, now you've solved the reporting issue, the thing that would be really good is when I get all that data, I have to spend 10 hours writing a report for the board of governors. And if you could just create a product that put all of the narrative around the data for me, that'd be amazing. And that left me gobsmacked, because I'd spent 2 years asking these questions And that was a whole nother level of innovation that we were not aware of. And it was only by solving their current problem could our customers then articulate what the next problem is. So even when your service is getting traction or your product is getting traction and is solving one of those problems, if you've done it right, it will actually uncover the next problem that they're going to encounter. And you can choose as a business owner whether you solve that problem or not, or you make a partnership with someone who solves that problem. But if you really understand the problem solution, like there's a cycle that people go through, you can start to create a product ecosystem that really works very well and makes you a lot of money and keeps your customers very happy. Or you can form a network of partnerships that are logical with the next problems that you know they're going to encounter because you've become the expert in their problems. So never ever let someone push back on you when you say, hey, I'm creating products that are developed in a customer-centric way, by them saying, oh, you never ask your customers what they want, because they'll just say faster horses. I push back on that vehemently because I really think it's stopping you creating innovations that unlock a lot of value for your business. So if you do those 5 conversations, and I'm going to challenge you, like 5 is the minimum. 5 is the minimum to have. If you push into the 20 and 30 range, you're like, I know a handful of entrepreneurs that do that. Of the entrepreneurs that I know that go to 20, 30, 100 conversations that are having like this, they have all had 7-figure exits from their businesses because they created something that got wild traction because they just are obsessed with their customers. They're obsessed with their customers' problems and the next problem they unveil and the next one and the next one, and their service gets better and better and better. Their marketing message gets better and better and better. So if you do at least of those 5, what I would say to you is I want you to think about this. What would it be like to feel absolute clarity on what your customers want from you? Have you ever done this where you articulate a problem so well that like you make a post about it on social media and it gets like 20, 30, 40 likes from people, and then you start getting messages around that post being like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. I'm going through that right now. I want to talk to you about that. That's the level that we need to be getting you on in terms of understanding the problem, right? And if you can articulate your customers' problems better than they can, it's magnetic because people are experiencing that pain, and it only takes you putting a voice to that pain, naming it and describing it, and people go, oh, I need to speak to you. You understand what I'm going through. And those 5 conversations is the start of that process. And I hope you get the light bulb moment from having those conversations, because once you do, you will never stop doing this, right? Because you'll say, why would I not have these conversations with people? I never have to guess about what my product is again. It will tell you what problem to solve, right? There is a plethora of reasons that people buy your product. And sometimes you're like, people are buying your product and you're thinking they're buying for one reason. Actually, they're buying for a slightly different reason. It happens to align, but you're misunderstanding why people are actually buying your product. I'm talking with a lot of VAs at the minute around their business and what they could do. And I've been telling them, like, I think like doing time audits for entrepreneurs is a really good way for you to get leads, because I'm not buying you really to solve any one particular problem. I'm buying your services because I feel an intense pressure on my time, and the problem you solve is that ability to free me to do things that bring more joy into my life, or I feel are more effective, etc., right? The surface level understanding of a VA's task, let's say, is like, I go into your emails and clean them up. Fine, right? That's like a feature, don't really care. But you start talking to me about freeing my time up, allowing me to spend time on more impactful things in my business. That's the actual problem you solve. So, these conversations will give you that clarity on the actual problem you're solving, and then you can start speaking about that. They will also allude to you how they want you to solve it, right? And they will draw on their experiences of other products and services they bought in the past that didn't quite do it and what they want you to avoid. They will tell you the exact sequence of steps that they want to go through to actually solve that problem. And so you don't need to guess, right? They will literally just tell you, oh, if you just did X, Y, and Z, I'd give you money. And then you listen, 2 ears, 1 mouth. You listen, you go do that, And surprise, surprise, you create a service that people actually want to buy. And I think this is the key of when you've really got this, when you've really, really got this, is people go from like ambivalent about your product or service to being excited about buying it. You can see these businesses out there in the market, they don't struggle for demand for their service at all. And people are super excited about buying it. And then when they've bought it, it delivers on the promise so well because it understands their customers' problems so well that they do a magical thing. They become a free sales and marketing team for the business. I was in a room with a group of founders the other day who had all bought Remarkable tablets. I don't know if you know anyone with a Remarkable tablet. It's this, it looks like paper, it's black and white, it's a tablet that's super simplified, right? And they all loved it so much that they spent half the workshop trying to sell me a Remarkable, which is, money can't buy that level of marketing for you, but it's only by deeply understanding the problems that you solve and that the problems that your customers encounter do you enable yourself to create a product that can even get into that realms of like creating those fanatic rabid fans about your product or service. So if you go and do these 5 calls, it will change your business. If you are currently confused at why someone would buy, go and do 5 calls. If you are struggling to get people to be excited to come and talk to you about your product or service, go and do these 5 calls. Don't try and sell to them on the call. Although here's the strange thing of when you do these calls really well, they often basically say, I want that, when is it coming out? And you'll get customers through them. Especially, if you've got like a software product coming out, you can sign them up as an early adopter list. If there is a difficulty in your mind of why someone is using your product or service or what you can offer them that makes them very excited to buy, this is the solution here. It's not spending what a lot of founders I meet try to do. They're like, oh, let's just throw 10 grand behind ads. Not going to solve your problem. It's not creating a new website. It's not creating buying yet another domain, changing the name, changing the branding. It's none of those things. It's you don't understand what problem people are really wanting you to solve. You now need to go and be that curious documentarian, get very, very curious about your customers' problems and just listen to them and let them tell you what they want to build.